Hey, my name is Adam. We're kicking off this series tonight. We're going to keep it kind of Christmas themed. I'm not going to tell the Christmas story or anything. So if you came here expecting like, tell me about the baby Jesus, you're not going to get that tonight. But I hope that it's still helpful because we're actually entering into a unique season. The unique season that we're entering into is we're about to move from a holiday that's based around gratitude in Thanksgiving to a holiday that's all based around generosity in Christmas. And you guys are fantastic at that last part. You do generosity better than most people. In fact, you're some of the most generous people on the entire planet. That's a legitimate scientific fact. You guys sitting here are some of the most generous people on the planet because you're about to go and spend your hard-earned cash, which you don't make enough of, by the way. Like, you should have gotten that promotion, and I know Karen got it, but you work way harder than her. Karen sucks, right? And you need more cash, but you're about to go and spend that on gifts for people that you love, and that's incredible, right? You're about to go and just spend money on gifts for people, not because of anything that they've done, not as a reward for their good behavior. In fact, sometimes you're about to buy them gifts in spite of their behavior, but just because you love them. And if you're wondering, well, how much money do we spend every year in gifts? I actually know that number because every year, the average American spends $700 buying gifts for people. This is just the average person, and you're all above average. So this is the around approximate amount of money that you're spending buying gifts for people. You're spending hundreds of dollars. You don't even, you're borrowing your HBO password from your friend, right? But you're buying gifts for other people. That's incredible, which all adds up to a collective for the whole United States of America, $465 billion buying gifts for Christmas. That is insane. Now, I know that sometimes those numbers might seem so large that they don't mean anything to you, or maybe you work in the financial industry, so you're used to large numbers like that, so it's kind of wasted on you. But let me just bring this into context a little bit. I'm from Ireland, which is a much smaller country than America, and our entire gross domestic product, right? Our entire GDP is less than half of this number. That's what the Irish economy generates every year. Less than half of what Americans spend on Christmas gifts, on deodorant sets and candles that nobody wants. But you're spending $465 billion on it because you're some of the most generous people in the world. And with all this lavish, extravagant generosity, it might be easy for us to kick back and think to ourselves, well, you know what? I think that the people who I love know exactly how I feel about them. I want to challenge that notion tonight for just a second. I want to challenge it because here's the truth. We're really, really good, or we're really good at receiving gifts, that's for sure. But we're also really good. You guys are really good at giving gifts. But what we sometimes aren't as good at is communicating the sentiment, communicating the emotion, the motivation behind the gift that we give to people. And you might say, well, hold on. I don't know if that's necessarily true. Don't actions speak louder than words? So, I mean, if I'm giving somebody a gift, doesn't that speak louder than the words? And that's absolutely true. But when sometimes actions and words don't match, it can be confusing. Or sometimes, and this is different for everybody's relationship, but sometimes when your actions and your words are in conflict, it really causes a lot of confusion. And that can, we think that people understand how we feel about them. We think that people know just how much we love them. But I don't know if that's always as clear on the other end. And yes, actions speak louder than words, but actions aren't always clearer than words. Let me tell you a bit more about what I'm talking about. A couple of years ago, a guy called John Gottman, he's a world-famous researcher about relationships, primarily romantic relationships, more specifically like marriage and stuff. And in some of his research, he's written a lot of books that are very, very widely known and widely read, in fact, critically acclaimed. In one of these books, he talks about a piece of research that they uncovered not too long ago, and it's about the conversations that we have. And conversations are a really relevant topic at this time of year because Christmas time, Thanksgiving, this whole holiday season, we have probably more conversations than we have at any other time throughout the year. Isn't this true? Like, you probably had conversations at Thanksgiving that you would not have chosen to have, right? You ended up in a room with somebody with turkey in the middle and you're like, all right, okay, I guess we're doing this. This is what we're going to do. We're going to talk. We have to. We're forced into it. You're going to go to parties, office parties, work parties. You're going to go to parties with your friends, and they're going to bring their friends that you don't really like, but they got invited, and it's kind of awkward. Or their girlfriend or boyfriend that you can't stand, but you have to be nice to them because they brought them. And it's going to encourage some conversations that you wouldn't normally choose to have. And so there are all these conversations around this holiday period, more than I think at any other time of the year. So this is a relevant topic. And what John Gottman discovered about conversations is that every conversation has a ratio. And it's a ratio that shows up over and over and over again. And the ratio relates to how much criticism versus how much encouragement are contained within our conversations. Now, I know you're thinking, ratio, what's next? Fractions? I know you hated math. I hated math too, but it's a really simple concept. Because here's what John Gottman realized. He uncovered that on average, we give one comment of encouragement for every 6 comments of criticism. It's just the average person. We give 1 comment of criticism and 6 comments of criticism. 1 of encouragement, 6 of criticism. Now that is very heavily skewed in favor of criticism. And what I know about you is that's not how you feel about the people in your life, especially the ones that you're close to, especially your friends and your family or your significant others. I know that you don't feel like that way, but John Gottman would say, regardless of whether or not you're aware of it, you are giving 1 comment of encouragement for every 6 comments of criticism. So my question to you is, what is your ratio? Think back to Thanksgiving time. What do you think the ratio of criticism to encouragement was in the conversations that you had over dinner or watching the football or over a couple of drinks? Because I bet if your family is anything like my family, you may have sat around the table and you might have said, we're going to all go around and we're going to say what we're most thankful for, right? Anybody else do this? And it's always awkward, and then the typical answer is, I'm just so grateful that I have a wonderful family like you guys. You're just the best, and God, I just love that I'm so lucky to have you all in my life. But the rest of the comments might have been, why is the turkey burned? Or you have the worst and stupidest opinions ever, or you're a control freak. I'm so glad I don't live in this house anymore. Right? It could have been any of those things. And we find ourselves in our conversations, I bet it's more than likely that this ratio reflected in your conversations. But what's causing this? Right? Why does this happen? Why did it happen over Thanksgiving? Why is it likely, if we don't do anything about it, to show up at Christmas? Because it's not how we feel. Right? None of you, if I were to ask, would say, you know what, I feel 6 times more critical of the people I love than I do feel, positive about them. I know you don't feel that way, so why is this happening? What's causing this uneven ratio in our conversations? I think it's some assumptions that we make. Some assumptions that you make, certainly some assumptions that I make. Because here's what I assume. I assume you know the good things I think and feel about you. Isn't this true? You think, I feel love towards you. I feel affection towards you. I feel like I'm lucky to have you in my life. And I assume that you know that because I feel it so deeply. I feel it so obviously. It's so deep in my bones. It's in my loins. It's like, how could you not know this, right? So I assume that you know the good things that I feel about you. But I also make another assumption. I assume you don't notice all the things you do wrong. I assume you don't notice all the things you do wrong, but I do. I can see them. Every time you do something that annoys me, I notice it. Every time you do something at work that disappoints me or lets me down or makes me miss a deadline, I notice that. Every time you do something in our relationship that makes me distrust you or be suspicious of you or disappoints my expectations of you, I notice that stuff. And so which of these things are you going to put your energy into talking about? It's going to be the thing that you think they don't notice. If you think they already know you love them, then you, as a wonderful, giving, generous person that you are going to kindly point out all the things that they do wrong because they don't notice it, and you do. Now, on the other side of this, it feels like criticism. But to us, it feels like helpful feedback. Like, you're welcome. Like, I'm giving you this. I'm going to name it all. Like, I'm not going to let back. And the reality is, we regularly point out behavior we want to correct. Isn't this true? We regularly point out behavior that we want to correct. But we rarely point out behavior we've come to expect. If I expect you to do it, I'm not really going to mention it to you. I'm probably not going to thank you for it. I'm probably not going to praise you for it because I've come to expect that you're going to do this. And it's not that we have unrealistic expectations of people, although that's sometimes true. Sometimes it's just that the people in our lives are so great. Like, they just do amazing things for us. They always show up on time. They always do what they say they're going to do. Right? They love us, they cook meals for us, they provide a home for us, they're steady in their relationship with us, whatever it is. They're wonderful people, so we've come to expect some big things from them. But when you come to expect it, you don't normally point it out. But I do regularly point out the things that I think you should correct. And this leads to an uneven balance in our conversation where we end up talking more about the things we want you to correct than the good things that you do, but we've come to expect them. And have you ever noticed that the closer somebody is to you, the more you notice their flaws? And the more the flaws get on your nerves because they affect you more. Like, for instance, I don't care how you brush your teeth. Like, that doesn't bother me. But I get infuriated by the way my wife brushes her teeth. Because she does this thing where she brushes her tongue and she gags. I hear from across the room and I'm like, stop doing that. But I don't care how you brush your teeth. It doesn't bother me at all. She's going to kill me. But when somebody is close to you, you're up close, you're in proximity, you're in relationship, you start noticing their flaws, the little things they do that annoy you, and then you want to point those things out. Here's why this is a problem. This is a problem because in our relationships, it's causing dysfunction. Causing dysfunction. If somebody constantly hears about all the things you think they should change, it's going to create a sense that they're not good enough, that they can't match up to your expectations, that they're disappointing you more than in reality they actually are. And is it any wonder that if the ratio is 6 comments of criticism to every 1 comment of encouragement, you have sometimes in your life dysfunctional relationships. You've got dysfunctional workplaces, dysfunctional employee relationships, dysfunctional living arrangements, dysfunctioning family homes. Of course, if the ratio is all messed up, then there's going to be dysfunction. But there's a solve to this. See, the solve is just to try and find a way to flip the ratio. Like, if we could flip this ratio somehow and express every time we feel gratitude or we want to praise them or we notice something they do that even though we've come to expect it, we appreciate it and we think it's great. And if we were to flip that ratio, that would help solve it, but that's difficult. And sometimes we tell ourselves, well, I don't want to just overload them with encouragement. I don't want to be a broken record telling them how amazing they are. Well, let me tell you something, and this is true because this is true of you. You cannot over-encourage somebody. Like, you cannot over-compliment somebody. I know at times there's this little bit of like, oh, stop, please, tell me how gorgeous I am, tell me how talented I am. Nobody is going to stop you. You can't over-encourage somebody. And at times you might feel like the encouragement you're providing somebody is just so small. Like, well, it's just a comment, it's just something that they do, and they normally do it every day, but yeah, I really appreciate it. There's no point in saying it. I mean, they're not even going to notice it. They're not even going to hear it. Trust me. Encouragement might seem small to you, but it always seems massive when you're on the other end of it. Isn't this true of you? Like, when somebody says even the smallest thing, it stands out. In fact, here's what I want to do, really, really quick. I want you to take 1 minute and tell somebody around you, what's one of the nicest things somebody has said to you? What's one of the nicest things somebody has said to you? Tell somebody around you, and then we'll get back. All right, come back. I bet for most of you, and maybe some of you are like, no one ever says anything nice about me, but I bet even if there was one occasion where somebody said something nice about it, you can remember. Does anybody want to just throw one out there? What's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to you? Or one of the best things, or one of the kindest things people have ever said to you?
Do your job well.
You do your job well. And isn't that's if you're on the giving end of that, you're like, they know they do their job well. I mean, they're fantastic at their job. But to you, it's so huge. It's like, you think I do my job well? I think I do my job well? Like, it just means so much, even though it seems small. Even though it seems small, it makes a huge impact. And if we could, in our conversations, in our relationships, do something to flip that ratio, it might change so much about our relationships. In fact, it might not just change their end of the relationship because you flipped the ratio and you're now encouraging them more than criticizing them. I think it actually does something for you too. The person who's on the giving end as much as on the receiving end, it changes something in them. In fact, there's an ancient Hebrew proverb that makes exactly this point. I want to look at this one, it's just like 3 sentences from a book in the Bible called not Hebrews, where'd I get that from? Called Proverbs. And Proverbs is basically a collection of ancient wise Hebrew sayings. So they over many decades, they collected some of the wisest, smartest, most helpful things that some teachers, some intellectuals, some philosophers, kings, wise men said, and they put them all into one document, and we have it preserved in the book of Proverbs in the Bible. Now, when I was a kid, my dad was a preacher, and Proverbs was his favorite book. So he would often quote Proverbs to me as a kid, and I'd be like, because I'm a little bit rebellious, I'm like, stop quoting the Bible at me, Dad. But I was pretty smart. Yeah, I'm going to take that down. And one of those small proverbs that's been preserved for a couple of thousand years, I want to look at tonight because it has something to say about this ratio in our conversation. So here's what it says. It's found in Proverbs 11. It says, it is possible to give away and become richer. It's possible to give away but become richer. Now, this is not necessarily a Bible truth. This is a truth. So if you're a little bit skeptical about the Bible, Proverbs is a great place to start because it's not necessarily religious wisdom. It's just smart things, wise things for the most part. This is true. We know this is true because if you've ever made an investment or if you know anybody who's made an investment, they have given something away which has reaped more dividends than they spent on it, right? This is just a truth. It is possible to give away and become richer, but it's also possible to hold on too tightly and lose everything. See, some people are so concerned with holding on to whatever they have that when it's spent, it's all gone. And you know this, if you've ever been given a gift of money or somebody's ever, I remember one time I got $1,000 tax back. It was like, I'll never spend this much money. Why, like all in one lump sum? I'm pretty sure I had spent it by that weekend, but it was like, my goodness, and I held on to it so tight, but you can never hold on to those things. They always go so much quicker than you think they're going to. He says it's possible to hold on too tightly and lose it. Yes, the liberal person shall be rich. And you're thinking, no, listen, the problem is the Democrats have too much money. That's the problem with this country. It's not what we're talking about. This is not talking about the political liberal. This is talking about the generous, the person who's liberal in their generosity, the person who's not concerned about conserving as much as they can for their own consumption, but liberally just wants to give as much as they possibly can to others, not even necessarily financial resources, but emotional, relational, somebody who just wants, I enjoy giving things away. I enjoy taking of some of what I have and giving it to other people. The liberal person shall be rich. By watering others, they water themselves. By watering others, they water themselves. Or another translation of this same proverb says, those who refresh others are themselves refreshed. Or those who replenish others are themselves replenished. Those who give energy to others are energized themselves. In other words, when you start taking some of what you have and investing it in other people, there's a connection that somehow brings it right back to you. And this is not a modern thing. This is not a 2017 thing. This is an all truth for all time thing. Those who replenish and energize and invest in others are themselves energized, replenished, refreshed. Some of the most energized people that I know are people who focus on investing in others, in encouraging others, in replenishing others. I know this one person. Her name is Mary. And I've known Mary for a long time. But one of the main ways that I knew Mary was a youth pastor at the church that I grew up in. And eventually, after a few years of being a youth pastor, she had some kids and she decided she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. So she gave up her job as a youth pastor at the church and she stayed at home with her kids. And a couple of years later, it just so happened that I ended up taking that same job and became a youth pastor in that same church. And since Mary still attended there, she was still around. And I remember it would have been so easy for Mary just to kind of leave me to do my thing and kind of, or maybe even to feel a little bit competitive with how I'm doing things versus how she used to do things. But what I noticed about Mary was she was one of the most encouraging people I've ever met. Regularly, if I did something, like if I held an event or if I did something new with our student ministry, Mary would be the first one to come to me and say, hey, that was great. You did a great job. Hey, that new idea you had, that's really working. Or hey, I know not too many people showed up, but this is going somewhere. I promise you, you're doing a great job. You're the best youth pastor this church has ever had. I'm like, you don't have to say those things, but that just energized me so much. And there were times where things were not working. New ideas that I tried to implement were not going the way that I expected them. Sometimes kids would leave, students would leave, and I was like, gosh, I just feel so discouraged. I feel like I'm not doing this job well. And Mary was there to replenish and refresh, to encourage me. But here's the thing about Mary. Mary is one of the most energetic, encouraged people that I've ever met, because not only when Mary gave up her job at the church did she go home and be a stay-at-home mom, after raising 3 extraordinarily energetic, crazy kids who are awesome, she started her own bakery business. Then she got involved in the local community, running several committees just to make the community better. And then on top of that, in her late 30s, decided she was going to run track and field events. And not only did she run track and field events, she won medals against young people in track and field events. She's in her 40s now, and she's still winning medals. She is one of the most energized people I have ever met. But I think there's an undeniable link between the fact that Mary was so encouraging, and it wasn't just me that she encourages everybody in her life. There's a connection between her willingness to invest, to replenish, to refresh, to encourage people, and her resource, her pool of encouragement and energy and refreshment. It's true, there's a link there. Now, I think that for most of us, we know that it's true. We know that we want to express our appreciation to people. We know that we want to encourage people, but sometimes the words just don't come out. We don't have a way to kickstart the process. But ironically, when we're really good at this, at funerals. Isn't this true? If you ever go to a funeral, even if there's somebody they were just the worst person, the neighborhood just couldn't stand this person, and they pass away, and everybody's lining up they were the kindest. They were the most wonderful. And even if it's a tiny amount, every good thing that person has ever done in their life, it gets named at their funeral. And then there are other people who do amazing things. And how many times have you heard people regret that they never said things to somebody when they were alive? They're like, I wish they had known how much I wish that they had known how great I thought they were at this. I wish that they had known how amazing I thought they were at their job, or how great of a dad they were, or how great of a spouse they were. I wish I had told them more. It's too late then. We got to start doing it now. We got to start doing something to kickstart the process. And I know that you might feel like, you know what? I think that's a good idea, but nobody does that for me. Okay, Adam, I hear you. You had Mary and she encouraged you, and maybe you have other people in your life, but I don't get that same treatment, and I get that. And that might cause some hesitation in you to want to run out the doors and start encouraging people and flip that ratio. But here's the thing. You got to realize that there are some people, and they just don't feel good enough about themselves to let anyone else feel good about themselves. There are some people, and they are so riddled with self-doubt and insecurity that they cannot fathom, they cannot tolerate anyone else feeling good about themselves. And that's okay. You know what we do with those people? We encourage them. We replenish them. We refresh them. Because as this proverb says, it comes back on us. We don't have to wait. We get to go first. So here's what I think should be almost a mantra. Here's how I think we kickstart the process. If we could do this, I think we could start flipping the ratio. It's very simple. If you see it, say it. This is not just a way to stop crime on MARTA, right? This is an actual thing. If you see it, say it. If you see somebody do something that you like, if you see somebody do something that's encouraging, if you see somebody who does something out of the ordinary, or if you see somebody do something that benefits you, even if it's come to be expected, say it. Or, here's one even further. If you feel it, say it. If you feel it, say it. If you feel appreciation, if you feel thankful, if you feel like you're the luckiest woman in the world to have this person in your life, say it. If you think that you are the luckiest employee to have this person as a boss, say it. If you think that you just hit the jackpot by ending up through some random circumstance living with this awesome roommate who things just go so well with, say it. Say it. And I think that Christmas is just the perfect opportunity to kickstart a rhythm of flipping the ratio and showing and expressing gratitude and giving encouragement to people. It's just like, it's the perfect opportunity to do it. A few years ago, when I learned about this research that led to the finding of the ratio, when I learned this, it kind of wrecked me. I'm like, gosh, I think I do that. Like, I legitimately think I do that, way more than I even know. And I wanted to do something about it. But I'm not that smart, so I couldn't really come up with a great, system or something. So I did one thing. It was coming up to Christmas, and I thought, here's one simple thing that I can do to help kickstart a rhythm of expressing my gratitude. I decided that with every Christmas gift I gave that year, I was going to write a note of encouragement and stick it on it with it. That's it. I knew I was going to give a lot of Christmas gifts out to people in my life because I've got a lot of people who I love. I thought I'm just going to write them a small note of encouragement. And then I'm going to hope that that kickstarts a rhythm in me of every time I see it, I say it. Every time I feel it, I say it. I don't hold back. I don't just wait until I want to correct somebody. Even when somebody does something I expect, I just want to express it. And I think that might be a helpful thing for you to try this year. If you find yourself going, I think that might be true of me. I feel like there might be some dysfunction in my relationship. I think there might be some dysfunction at work. I think there might be a little bit of dysfunction in my living arrangement. Yeah, that might be one way to kickstart a rhythm of gratitude that helps to flip the ratio. Because imagine the dysfunction that you could heal if you did this. Imagine if this was just second nature to you. If I see it, I say it. If I feel it, I say it. Imagine the dysfunction that could heal. Imagine how much better your workplace might be if every time you said it or every time you saw it, you just expressed it. Every time you felt it, you just acknowledged it. But even more than that, come here. Imagine how good this would feel to you if somebody decided that they were going to do what it took to flip the ratio on your behalf. Imagine if somebody in your life, imagine if your colleague, the person you live with, your significant other, a parent, imagine if they decided that they were going to put themselves out there and say it, express it, acknowledge it. Wouldn't that feel awesome? Wouldn't that be so energizing? Wouldn't that be so refreshing? Wouldn't you want to do more of what it was they appreciated? Wouldn't you just be clamoring at every opportunity to do whatever it was that they celebrated? Whenever you got the next chance, wouldn't you want to do the thing that they praised about you? Of course you would, because you're a human being. We have the opportunity. We don't have to wait. We can go first. We can kickstart the rhythm. And as we do that, we can flip the ratio, heal the dysfunction, and have better relationships. And you can start it this Christmas. You can start it just by doing something so simple, but it's worth it. It's worth it to say it, to express it, to acknowledge it, and go first. Let me pray for us. Heavenly Father, we believe as Christians that you have shown us how much you love us. You have shown us the depth and the height and the width of your love for us by giving your Son on our behalf. God, we appreciate that. We don't ever want to take that for granted. And Christmas is such a fantastic reminder of that level of love that you've shown for us. But God, we also want to, for those of us who are Christians, reflect that. We want to reflect that to people. So God, would you give us the courage to actually speak up, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it seems like it's just a small, insignificant thing. God, give us the courage to speak up and encourage people and watch as we ourselves are encouraged and energized and refreshed. In Jesus' name, amen.